Dealing with Cynthia Brincat's article on what professions and professionals are, she separates the what and the how in answering the question of what it means to be a professional. What Brincat means is that a professional is first someone who not only practices a profession, with reference of course to Bayles's criteria for differentiating the professions from the mere occupations, but secondly, a professional is someone who practices professionally. Brincat states that if an occupation is an agreed upon profession and the person who performs it does so professionally, then that person is a professional. Doing a job professionally means that the person carries out their function well, doing a job efficiently, technically well, with benefit to others, with benefit to the client and to the stakeholders who may be involved. It also means performing one's function with responsibility to the public, doing so ethically and in a relationally sensitive way. Acting professionally might include, for example, some attitude combining beneficence with impartiality, being helpful in providing the service while not being too attached in a personal way that would influence one's actions or the advice we give to our clients, or that would put us in a situation where there's a conflict of interest. According to Cynthia Brincat, one is a professional if one works in an occupation that's a profession and performs one's functions professionally, meaning technically well, efficiently and competently, with benefit to others, stakeholders, and the public, doing so in a relationally sensitive way, for example, towards coworkers and clients, doing so with responsibility to the public, holding the interests of the public paramount, doing so with an orientation towards the public good, to the community rather than mere self-interest, doing so in accordance with professional codes of conduct and codes of ethics, doing so with a high degree of moral agency, and doing so with wisdom, involving critical moral deliberation in applying the esoteric knowledge that separates the professions from the non-professions. It's not enough to know all the ins and outs of one's discipline, but also we need to have wisdom in carrying out actions in fulfilling our critical functions. So to be a professional for Brincat, there's not only a need for specialized knowledge, but also wisdom in performing one's critical function and wisdom in applying that knowledge, namely applying it in ways that do not cause harm to clients and consumers, to the public, or to the long-term health of the economy and the environment. Hence the importance of ethics and moral philosophy. Another key distinction in our effort to grasp what a profession is made by Bernard Barber. He introduces the term emerging, marginal, or candidate professions into the mix, alongside full professions and mere occupations. Emerging, marginal, or candidate professions are occupations that seem to have some way to go before becoming full professions. They have not completely satisfied these criteria or the attributes which serve to define professions, but in some case they look to be in the process of doing so. Emerging, marginal, or candidate professions are occupations that may be in the process of professionalization, having satisfied many, but not all, of Bayles's listing of requirements in significant degree. Marginal and emerging professions in some instances are on the way to becoming full professions, increasing their satisfaction of the criteria by which we define professions. For example, the members are organizing themselves into associations, they're increasing or raising or codifying standards and norms for practice. Perhaps they're engaged in writing up a code of ethics to codify these norms. We might ask here if the converse direction is possible, namely whether or not a profession can become a mere occupation in changing times, the function it provides becoming less and less critical to the society in question. One example here might be the fact that during the Middle Ages in Europe it was common for us to go to our barber for health advice, surgery, and dentistry, something that you probably wouldn't want to do today. What I'd like you to do now is to take a look at the backside of the handout on the meaning of the notion of a profession, where there's a continuum schema or diagram, as well as some discussion questions to answer. The first of the discussion questions goes as follows. In relation to the criteria for a profession set out by Bayles, Brincat, Hughes, and Barber, what are 3 or 4 examples each of full professions, emerging, marginal, or candidate professions, and non-professions or mere occupations. Place each of your examples on the continuum above in the position you deem them to occupy in society, and say exactly why you're classifying in this way. So what I want you to do here is to plot out where exactly you think your examples of occupations fit on the continuum schema, noting that you might even plot occupations to one side or the other of each of the categories, or even to some extent in between these categories. And hopefully you can give some good reasons for why you're doing so. You might categorize occupations like master electrician, or family doctor, or lawyer, or journalist, or pharmacist, or hospital porter, or corporate accountant, or tax accountant, bank teller, bank manager, financial advisor, entrepreneur, CEO of a major Fortune 500 company, human resources officer in a corporation, a hotel manager, floor manager in a department store, secretary in a corporate office, speculative day trader, factory floor worker, bellboy, CIA agent, garbage truck operator, or waste management, cosmetologist, professional athlete, hairdresser, housemaid, school nurse, school counselor, grocery bagger, Armani salesperson, nutritionist, line chef, and waitress. Any one of these, or some of the ones that you come up with by yourself, feel free to plot those out on the continuum and say why you're doing it that way. The second question is, on the basis of the criteria set out by Bayles, Brincat, Hughes, and Barber in relation to the meaning of the terms profession and professional, are business persons necessarily to be placed within the category of those who are employed in the professions? Why or why not? Are businesses necessarily professionals? How should business persons operate in respect to the meanings of these terms? The third question is, would you consider your current and or future occupation to be a profession, an emerging or marginal profession, or a non-profession, occupation, vocation, craft, or trade? The fourth one is engaging in the type of classification somehow an elitist project? Why or why not? The fifth question, are considerations of morality in the professions distinct from, more advanced, of higher importance, more complex, more serious, more intense than those for other mere occupations and for other general considerations of ethics in our society? Indicate which you agree with and which you do not agree with. Sixth question, in relation to their specific critical roles, do you think professionals encounter situations calling for moral deliberation more often or more numerously or more variously than the average citizen in his or her daily or occupational life? Explain. Well, what might be concluded from this exercise are a few things. First, to be considered as working in a profession, one must have checked off most of the criteria on the list given by Bayles. As such, many occupations in the business sector don't qualify to be considered full professions. They're mere occupations or emerging, marginal, or candidate professions. But others are certainly full professions, for especially chartered accountants, financial consultants, and advisors. Second, while anyone in their working life can blow up the world, essentially, the moral responsibilities of professionals are perhaps more intense and more numerous than those of people who are employed in mere occupations, simply because the advice that's given, the decisions that they make, the products that they create and produce have the capacity to impact the livelihood and well-being of their clients and of the public heavily, both physically and or financially. As such, society must ensure that the professional in question is trustworthy in carrying out their critical functions. Lastly, even if one is a business person who is working in a mere occupation, from the standpoint of moral philosophy, one might think of adopting or emulating at least some of the wisdom, standards, and responsibility requirements that pertain to full professions in one's activities and functions. Before proceeding to the next videos on the notion of the normative leeway that's given to professionals, including to business professionals by society, be sure to take a look at the articles by Albert Carr, Is Business Bluffing Ethical?, which is in the course pack. Also the article by Norman Gillespie, The Business of Ethics, which is also in the course pack. A supplementary non-required reading will be John Christian Smith's Strong Separatism, which I've placed on Nexus.